bloodshed and the resistance of the Palestinian people. It is the red triangle in the Palestinian flag. More than 400 days of ongoing war on Gaza. What has changed in West Asia? We get you the latest. In last week's episode, we asked how President-elect Donald Trump's appointment in the United States presidency would stop the wars in West Asia. This week, we focus on his cabinet. He has already chosen Mike Huckabee as U.S. envoy to Israel and Pete Hegseth as the head of the U.S. military. How would this cabinet approach the war that is ongoing in Gaza and in Lebanon? We tell you.
The cabinet of the US president-elect is slowly taking shape in the face of complex West Asia conflict. Donald Trump has finalized his team. These are some of the prominent names one will hear over the next few months who will implement US policies for West Asia. One of the top names in this list of appointments is Mike Huckabee, slated to be the next US ambassador to Israel. Huckabee, the former governor of Arkansas, has a track record of hardline pro-Israel rhetoric. He previously said Israel has a rightful claim to the West Bank. In his 2017 interview with CNN, Huckabee said there is no such thing as occupation. Huckabee refers to the West Bank by its biblical names, Judea and Samaria. Trump's nomination drew immediate praise from senior Israeli officials and a backlash from Palestinians whose cause Huckabee has neglected in the past.
I want to congratulate my dear friend, Governor Mike Huckabee. I think he will be a great ambassador to Israel. He is very familiar with the facts on the ground. I think he visited Israel dozens of times. He had like a yearly visit to Israel, and I had the honor to escort him. Also after October 7th, he came and I took him to visit the sites on Kfar Aza, Be'eri, and other locations where the massacre took place. So we will welcome him and we will be expecting his arrival.
The general sentiment among Palestinians is that election of Donald Trump will be a setback for the Palestinian cause. This belief is based on two factors. First, the experience from Trump's previous term, during which he demonstrated significant bias towards Israel. Second, the appointments he made, including that of future US ambassador to Israel.
Stephen Witkoff is Trump's pick for the next Middle East envoy. Witkoff raised a vast amount of money for the Trump campaign, including from Jewish voters after the Biden administration stopped shipping some bombs to Israel. Fox News host Pete Hegseth will be the Secretary of Defense in the Trump administration. Critics have questioned the 44-year-old Army veteran's lack of prior experience in leading such a vast government organization. Pete has criticized the so-called woke policies pursued by Pentagon leaders and has expressed his disdain for women in combat roles. Trump believes Hegseth fits perfectly into the America First policy. Replacing Antony Blinken in the new US administration is Marco Rubio. Considered a foreign policy hawk, Rubio has been highly critical of China and Iran, that are considered the US's top economic and geopolitical adversaries. On the Gaza war, like Trump, Rubio has been staunchly behind Israel. calling Hamas a terrorist organization that must be eliminated. He says America's role is to resupply Israel with the military materials needed to finish the job. To deal with ceasefire negotiations and intelligence operations on the ground, Trump patted his former intelligence director John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe has criticized how Democratic President Joe Biden's administration has approached the conflict in West Asia. In an article published in June, he argued that Biden's threat to withhold weapons shipments to Israel over its military actions in Gaza had put a key ally at risk. He also argued that the administration had not been tough enough on Iran. Ratcliffe, if confirmed, will be the first person to have served both as Director of National Intelligence and Chief of the CIA. The CIA Director, who reports to DNI, oversees a staff of 21,000 people providing US policymakers with insight on global security threats.
57 West Asian nations gathered in Saudi Arabia to warn Israel. The leaders of the Arab-Islamic Summit told Israel to withdraw from the occupied territories in Palestine. They also went to condemn the war in Gaza and in Lebanon. The head of the Arab League, the secretary of the Arab League, said that Israel is in danger of losing its United Nations membership. We tell you more in this report.
This week, Arab and Muslim leaders gathered in Riyadh to speak in one voice on the ongoing wars in West Asia. The meeting served as a definitive moment of solidarity, with a call to Israel to withdraw from all occupied Palestinian territories. Leaders of 57 nations emphasized the urgent need for a sovereign Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. They called for an internationally sponsored plan with specific steps and timelines to achieve this. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman denounced Israel's war on Gaza as a genocide in the first such declaration by the kingdom's prime minister and de facto ruler.
The kingdom reiterates its categorical rejection of this genocide committed by Israel against the brotherly Palestinian people, which has left more than 150,000 martyrs and injured, most of whom are women and children.
The Arab League secretary even warned that Israel's UN membership is in danger.
I trust that a lot of states will support freezing the membership. And this freezing is not under the UN Security Council's vision, meaning the UNSC is only partly concerned with expelling and joining members. But we are not speaking about expelling or joining. We are talking about freezing. Accordingly, we might witness soon the freezing of the membership through a UNGA majority vote. Accordingly, it is a step that puts things in the right place.
Hamas responded by urging Arab and Muslim nations to translate their pledges into concrete action, demanding immediate efforts to halt Israeli aggression. However, the hard-right Israeli government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu remains opposed to a Palestinian statehood. Israel's new foreign minister has dismissed the prospect as not realistic.
It is important to state that Israel, what we call Judea and Samaria, and others call the West Bank, not as occupied territories, but as disputed territories when we have a claim on certain territories, mainly those who are citizens are living there, we made it clear in the past, this is our position, and we hadn't changed it basically.
Israel's latest comments come in complete contrast to growing calls from the international community, especially its ally US, for the need to negotiate and implement a two-state solution.
Gaza is on the grips of a humanitarian crisis. Now, humanitarian agencies time and again have warned of an imminent famine in the enclave. In the latest, the US gave a deadline to Israel to boost the aid getting into the enclave. While the United States says that Israel passed its test, the United Nations said that the aid getting to Gaza is still not even enough for survival. We tell you more.
It has been a month since the US gave Israel a deadline of 30 days to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza or risk losing military support. The ultimatum came after the UN sounded the alarm bell, saying that the flow of food and other essential materials is at its lowest ever since the war broke out. Israeli forces opened Kisufim crossing into central Gaza hours before the deadline expired. The UN and international agencies on the ground say Israel has failed its test to deliver aid. Emergency workers say their mission to dispatch even basic necessities such as water has been denied.
There have been limited medical evacuations by the World Health Organization. But I can tell you, even this week, I have had 2 missions to the north that I was supposed to be on for WASH, for providing chlorine tablets and assessing facilities of those sheltering. These missions were denied.
The military body in charge of aid passage says it had taken several steps over the past month to increase the amount of aid entering the territory. Israel says the UN and international aid groups need to do a better job of distributing supplies.
What I can tell you is that on COGAT's level, we've been working very closely with the US throughout the entire war on increasing our capacity to facilitate humanitarian aid and to continue progressing those efforts. In recent months, we've seen several developments in terms of the entrance of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, and we will continue to work with the US in order to improve those.
Aid into Gaza is typically measured in terms of truckloads of food and supplies entering the territory. The US has demanded 350 trucks daily, which is still below the 500 a day that entered before the war. UN tally says 39 aid trucks have entered the Strip with a population of over 2 million. The UN has warned virtually no food or other aid has reached the northernmost part of Gaza since the beginning of October. That's when the Israeli military launched a major offensive against Hamas fighters in the areas of Jabalia, Beit Lahiya and Beit Hanun. Human Rights Watch says Israel has caused forced displacement of Palestinians in Gaza to an extent that constitutes war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Israel claims that it set up an evacuation system to allow Palestinians, civilians in Gaza to seek safety. But in order to move a civilian population, certain conditions must be met. First of all, it has to be temporary. It can only be until the hostilities are completed. Number 2, civilians have to be directed to safer areas where their basic humanitarian needs are met. And thirdly, the civilians can only be evacuated if it's a dire military necessity. And on all 3 of these, our report and documentation shows that Israel has failed to meet the burden. Therefore, they are committing forced displacement, and because it's pursuant to a state policy, it is a crime against humanity.
The Israeli military has denied seeking to create permanent buffer zones. Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar said that Palestinians displaced from their homes in northern Gaza would be allowed to return at the end of the war.
Now, let us talk about Lebanon. Israel has been receiving blows on the ground. Several Israeli soldiers have been killed in combat in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah is fighting face-to-face with rockets and with drones. In the latest, they were even able to attack the defense ministry in Tel Aviv, Israel. On the other side, the Israelis continue to pound Beirut, southern suburb of Beirut, southern villages, Biqa, and also northern areas of Lebanon. We tell you more in this report.
Lebanon's Hezbollah group and the Israeli forces are involved in fierce battles, with neither side willing to hold fire. This week, Hezbollah claimed it struck the Israeli army's headquarters in Tel Aviv, the very core of Israeli military operations. The Lebanese group said it targeted the site in Israel's commercial hub that houses both the defense and army headquarters. Moments later, Hezbollah said it launched a salvo of missiles at another site in Tel Aviv that it claims was owned by Israeli Weapons Industries, or the IWI. The IWI is the primary weapons supplier for Israeli forces. Wednesday marked the bloodiest day for the IDF. Several Israeli soldiers lost their lives in combat in Lebanon. Hezbollah challenged Israel on its claims of seizing control of southern Lebanon's towns and villages. Israel also retaliated by unleashing relentless fire on Beirut, Baalbek, Tyre, and southern Lebanese towns. Dozens of Lebanese civilians have been killed and hundreds were displaced within a week. Several rescue workers also lost their lives. Scores of civilians were killed after an Israeli strike hit a residential area in the Syrian capital of Damascus. Israel says it will thwart any attempt to smuggle arms to Hezbollah via Syria.
We will attack every attempt to bring weapons from Syria to Hezbollah, and we will attack all infrastructure we identify in Syria whose purpose is to produce weapons for Hezbollah.
While Hezbollah is clear it will not take part in any negotiations while facing Israeli fire, the Lebanese opposition party is opposing the decision.
It's true that we have lost a lot until now, but we can spare our people the rest, instead of continuing on like this to the end, unless anyone else has a magic solution to stop Israel.
On the Israeli side, contradictory statements are emerging regarding a ceasefire in Lebanon. While Israel's new defense minister says there won't be any ceasefire till the IDF achieves its aims, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar says progress has been made in the talks.
We will not make any ceasefires, and we will not stop and will not take our foot off the pedal.
I think there is certain progress working on the issue. We are working with the Americans on the issue. There is progress, and we will be ready to be there if we will know, first of all, that Hezbollah is not on our border, is north and to the Litani River, and that Hezbollah will not be able to arm again with new weapon systems and so on that will come from Syria, from the sea, from the airport. Anyway.
The World Bank has warned that more than a year-long war has cost Lebanon over $5 billion in economic losses. Over 100,000 Lebanese homes are destroyed. On Israel's side, 47 soldiers have lost their lives in combat since the 30th of October, and over 60,000 Israelis are displaced from their homes in the north.
Fires are blazing, not only in Lebanon, not only in Gaza, Palestine, but also in the West Bank. In the latest, the Israeli finance minister said that it is time for Israel to govern and rule the West Bank. Listen in.
Just 33 kilometers from Gaza lies the occupied region of West Bank. facing intense Israeli attacks along with Gaza. Since last October, West Bank has roughly 1 million more Palestinian residents than the Gaza Strip, and nearly 700,000 Israeli settlers. Israel occupied West Bank in 1967, and since then it has maintained its military control over the region, with checkpoints, arrests, demolitions and frequent raids. The raids picked up pace since the Hamas assault on Israel last year, this month. A Palestinian was killed in West Bank's tube. In Ramallah, Jewish settlers torched 20 cars during an attack on Palestinian property. Onlookers say a dozen masked attackers torched vehicles with petrol bombs.
They burned my car, my colleague's car, my brother's car. There are cars inside that they burnt, by a petrol tank, which thank God was spared, and our neighbors. They burned their houses and cars.
The Israeli administration feels the Trump's government will lift what the settlers call illegitimate sanctions imposed over its attacks on Palestinians. On Monday, Israel's far-right finance minister said by 2025 he hoped Israel will extend sovereignty to the occupied West Bank.
I intend, with God's help, to lead a government decision that says that the government of Israel will work with the new administration of President Trump and the international community to apply the Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, and for American and international recognition, and to the end of the Israeli-Arab conflict in the Middle East.
Most countries deem the settlements illegal under international law. In 2019, the then Trump administration abandoned the long-held US position that the settlements are illegal before President Joe Biden restored it.
45 minutes away from Lebanon's capital, Beirut, there is a town called Amshit. In Amshit, schools have reopened for students and also are still shelters for the displaced. We bring you this story.
We hope to have victory and go back home for the sake of our children. This year has been unfair. Some children are studying while others aren't. Either everyone studies or everyone is deprived, and the school year should be postponed.
That's all we have for you on this episode of the West Asia Post. I will see you next week with a brand new lineup, always bringing you the most recent updates, news and ground reports from West Asia. I'm your host, Ghadi Francis, signing off. For more global news, keep on watching WION World is One.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at WION.com.
It's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this.
I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now.
WION brings you a special business talk show where we bring forth the stories of business leaders.
From breakthrough technologies to visionary leadership, we will unlock the trends, the tactics, and dive into the minds of the industry's most influential leaders.
WION brings you this special series to uncover what drives them in a candid talk show, WION Business Masters.